Hitler's plans for the world if he won World War II. What if I told you that, in an alternate universe, Hitler not only won World War II, but went on to rule the world? Crazy, right? Well, believe it or not, that could have been a real possibility had things gone differently during the war. What would the world look like today if Hitler's armies had swept across Europe and taken control of the entire continent? How would he have dealt with the Jews and other minorities? Would he have launched a full-scale invasion of the United States? And what role would Japan have played in his master plan? These are just a few of the questions we'll be answering today as we explore one of history's most terrifying what-if scenarios. What if Hitler won World War II? So sit back, grab your popcorn, and get ready for a wild ride through an alternate timeline where evil won. When Hitler came to power in Germany, he wasted no time in setting his sights on world domination. In Mein Kampf, he outlined his vision for a new world order with the German people at the helm. According to Hitler, the world was divided into two camps: the Nordic race, which included Germans, Swedes, Norwegians, and Danes, and the Untermensch, or underhuman, which included slaves, Jews, and other minorities. Hitler believed that the Nordic race was destined to rule over the Untermensch and that the German state should be expanded to include all other Germanic peoples. He also wanted to create a massive empire in the east that would stretch from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea, which he referred to as Lebensraum, or living space. This empire would be populated by the Germanic peoples who would displace the Untermenschen, whom he planned to either enslave or exterminate. To achieve this goal, Hitler began rearming Germany and forming alliances with other European powers, including Italy and Japan. He also embarked on a campaign of appeasement, which involved making territorial concessions to his neighbors in an effort to avoid war. However, when France and Britain refused to accept his demands for the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia, Hitler invaded the country in 1939, marking the beginning of World War II. Throughout the war, Hitler's armies swept across Europe, conquering one country after another. By 1942, they had taken control of most of Western Europe, including France and Belgium, as well as Denmark, Norway, and the Netherlands. He also launched a surprise attack on the Soviet Union, quickly making significant gains against the unprepared Russian army. Meanwhile, Japan was making its own conquests in Asia, taking control of large parts of China and Southeast Asia. As the war raged on, Hitler's ambitions grew. He set his sights on Great Britain, launching a massive air campaign against London and other cities in an attempt to force the British to surrender. At the same time, he continued his advance in the east, pushing deep into Russia and Ukraine. By 1943, however, the tide of the war began to turn. The German army suffered a series of costly defeats, including the Battle of Stalingrad, which resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of German soldiers. With the entry of the United States into the war, the Allies were able to supply the Soviet Union with the weapons and ammunition it needed to fight back against the Germans. Eventually, the Allied forces pushed westward, liberating France and Belgium and driving the Germans back into Germany itself. But let's imagine that the outcome of the war was different. What if Hitler had managed to defeat the Allies and establish his new world order? The first order of business would have been the complete conquest of Europe. With the exception of neutral countries like Switzerland and Spain, Hitler would have likely forced these nations to either join the German sphere or be completely subjugated. He would have installed puppet regimes in key countries like France, which he saw as a potential ally against Russia, while others like Britain would have been turned into German protectorates. Even before the war, Hitler had already begun to implement his plans for a post-war Europe. In 1939, he issued the notorious Comanco Decree, which aimed to annex Austria and Czechoslovakia and eliminate their Jewish populations. During the war, he also ordered the systematic execution of political opponents, intellectuals, and other undesirables in the occupied territories. If Hitler had won the war, he would have likely extended this brutal reign of terror across the entire continent. But what about the rest of the world? What would have happened to the Japanese, Americans, and other non-European nations? According to Hitler's plans, the Japanese would have been granted control over large parts of Asia, including China, Korea, and Southeast Asia. This would have created a vast Pacific empire that would stretch from the Russian border to Australia. The Germans and Japanese would have ruled over a global empire that spanned 3 continents, with Hitler as the supreme leader of the New World Order. But how would he have dealt with the Jewish people? Hitler's hatred of Jews was well known, and he made it clear that he wanted to eliminate them from German society. In 1935, he passed the Nuremberg Laws, which stripped Jews of their citizenship and banned them from marrying or having sexual relations with non-Jews. During the war, Hitler ordered the establishment of concentration camps, where Jews and other minorities were imprisoned and subjected to forced labor, torture, and murder. If Hitler had won the war, he would have likely carried out his plan to exterminate all Jews in Europe, and possibly even worldwide. He may have also attempted to eliminate other minorities such as homosexuals, disabled people, and political dissidents. As for the United States, Hitler had mixed feelings. On the one hand, he admired the country's natural resources and industrial capacity, and he had hoped to form an alliance with it before the war. On the other hand, he viewed the Americans as inferior to the Nordic race, and he hated their democracy and cultural influence. In fact, Hitler had planned to invade the United States as early as 1942. But when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, he decided to postpone his invasion until after Germany had conquered Europe. After declaring war on the US and its allies, Hitler would likely have ordered the Luftwaffe to launch a massive bombing campaign against American cities. At the same time, German U-boats would have been deployed to disrupt transatlantic shipping and starve the United States of vital supplies. If the German war machine had been able to function without the serious setbacks it suffered in reality, such as the Battle of the Atlantic and the Battle of the Bulge, it's possible that the American people would have become demoralized and called for peace. Hitler's dream of a world dominated by the Nordic race would have come true, and a new dark age would have descended upon humanity. But thankfully, this never happened. In reality, Hitler's forces were eventually defeated, and the Allied powers emerged victorious. The war had a devastating impact on Europe, leaving the continent devastated and millions of people dead. But it also led to the creation of the United Nations, which was established to promote international cooperation and prevent future wars. In the decades since then, Europe has rebuilt itself and become one of the most prosperous regions in the world. The Jewish people have also made remarkable strides towards recovery, with Israel becoming a thriving modern state and Jewish communities around the world working to preserve their culture and heritage. Although the horrors of the Holocaust will never be forgotten, it is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit that those affected by it have been able to rebuild their lives and contribute to making the world a better place. While it's impossible to say for sure what would have happened had Hitler won World War II, it's clear that the world as we know it would be very different today. Instead of the relative peace and prosperity we've enjoyed since the end of the war, we would likely be living in a world dominated by fear and oppression. But thankfully, that's not the world we live in. We can take comfort in knowing that the brave men and women who fought against the Nazis were successful in defeating evil and securing a better future for all of us. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a thumbs up if you liked the video. Also, be sure to stay tuned for more historical insights. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time.